This is part 2 of a video on Dulce et Decorum Est, and if you're after part 1, where we did this annotation, then have a look at the channel where that video is. Okay, so we're picking up in the second stanza, where we've got, after the kind of description of the exhaustion and the awful state the soldiers are in, we've then got this kind of moment of attack from the mustard gas. So gas, quick, boys. We can annotate that as being kind of monosyllabic because we've got those kind of one syllable exclamations, and that creates a sense of panic and fear. It also interrupts this iambic pentameter. If you remember, we'd said before that the rhythm of the poem was irregular, but kind of roughly followed that dee-dum, 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 dee-dum. But with these sort of single syllable shouts, you get a kind of stress, 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 stress. So it becomes kind of really attention grabbing. And this idea, taking it down to this end stop, this full stop here, so this sense unit, say an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone was still yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. So looking at the meaning of that there, all of a sudden the shout goes out that there's being a gas attack and everybody starts grabbing round for their gas masks and helmets. But one man doesn't manage to put his breathing apparatus on in time and inhales some of this poison gas. So looking at how it's described, this idea of an ecstasy, this was initially, we use it now to mean extreme happiness, but it initially meant a kind of religious trance, that kind of idea of being so completely kind of focused on something. So this ecstasy of fumbling, all of a sudden, everything is centered on trying to get these masks on as quickly as you can. And fumbling and stumbling are both present participle verbs that are kind of being used here as nouns. Sort of, there's a fumbling, a fumbling, this is a verb. But it kind of implies that there's no order, there's disarray, it's all very chaotic all of a sudden, which is supported by this idea of clumsy helmets. So, we've got this assonance here, fumbling, clumsy, stumbling, that sense of the noise, and that's going to be an H in assonance, so repetition of a vowel sound, but it's all very kind of quick, it's all very kind of basic there. So they managed to get the helmets on just in time, but this someone still yelling out. So we have this one man, so the focus changes to this one soldier who is now floundering. And if you're floundering, you think of a fish out of water, kind of flapping around. This kind of movement of sort of frantically flapping. And the simile, like a man in fire, not on fire, in fire, because the effect of this gas is going to be they're going to get into his lungs and both simultaneously kind of burn and drown him as this effect happens. Lime was a chemical that's corrosive, so kind of would burn away. So all of a sudden, this one particular soldier is still hasn't got his mask on time and starts kind of flapping around. And dim through the misty panes, so the speaker is looking out through his own clumsy helmet through this kind of window, so it gives it a sense of unreality or detachment, which is going to be kind of broken through by the kind of graphic imagery. But it's like the gas there is creating thick green light, and as under a green sea I saw him drowning. So we move into a metaphor there, so we're no longer in this kind of simile, it's light. This man actually is drowning, so it's the intensity of the experience there. So as if we've got simile there, changes to metaphor, because all of a sudden the reality of this situation is really kind of coming home. And we can see that the rhyme scheme, we've got fumbling, stumbling, time, lime, light, is going to match with sight underneath here. Here we've got, again, this kind of break in the pattern. If we just move down a little bit, the first stanza's been those 8 lines. Now we've got these 6 and a break for this bit of the stanza. So the rhyme scheme gets picked up here. So we've got light and sight, but this kind of change into a different stanza shows the kind of disjointed and fragmented experience. You know, these memories are kind of coming back and hitting them hard, but kind of almost like flashes of things. We've also got drowning rhyming with drowning, okay, which really does show that kind of the image of this man's suffering won't go away. That's the image that stays, okay? So it emphasizes that image. The man is drowning in his own body. And we slightly change in this kind of fragment of a stanza, that this little couplet, which is really kind of part of or is separated out from these 6 lines, this sestet. You know, beforehand it's been an octet, so 8 lines octet, whereas here Owen has put 6-2. So here we've got the kind of reference to how much the speaker is haunted by this memory in all my dreams, not just in some of my dreams, but in all my dreams. Okay. If you were doing a task where you were comparing this poem, and I'm thinking of people who are doing the comparison to Remains, again, it's that idea of kind of not being able to shake that vision, being kind of absolutely kind of the victim of those flashbacks and horror. So in all my dreams, before my helpless sight. So again, kind of talking about the fact that this speaker is passive, can't do anything. If you're passive, you're kind of not able to move. He can only watch. And he's actually making the reader do that as well, because this description is going to kind of bring that horror home to us. And then these verbs, he plunges at me, bittering, choking, drowning. We've got the present tense idea here, is this is ongoing. This isn't a memory that's happened and is gone. This is something that keeps coming back in all my dreams. Can't get rid of it. Right? And then we move to, again, this idea of making you as a reader think of it, because we start this next stanza with this conditional if. So we've got this big long sentence that goes all the way down here to this full stop, okay? And we've got to kind of separate out the sense units here, because our speaker Owen is or kind of the speaker Owen, and they're likely to be the kind of same person here. But it's saying, if you could have seen all of this, then, my friend, you would not repeat that lie. So the basic kind of movement, or the basic kind of meaning of this stanza is, you know, if you had been able to witness this, then you wouldn't say it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. And he's going to kind of detail the horror of that experience. So we've talked about dreams, and dreams with all of their usual connotations of being pleasant and lovely and fantastical. These are smothering dreams. And if you smother something, you kind of stop it from breathing. Okay, so these, just like the soldier who's dying from the gas, Owen's speaker is saying, you know, his dreams are smothering. You know, you also can't breathe. So if in these dreams that are choking you, you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in. And pacing, kind of different from walking, it's got that kind of, I suppose, the anxiety to it as well. And the poor soldier gets flung in the wagon. This is a war where people are dehumanized. You know, they really can't stop and administer first aid. The best they can do is kind of grab him as he's dying, so they've got his body. You know, there's no medical assistance they can give him. He's almost kind of through necessity, treated as an object. So if you could pace behind the wagon we flung him in, and that becomes a bizarre parody. So a parody is when something imitates it, almost as a joke, right? But here it's this kind of almost distasteful impression. It's a bizarre parody of a funeral procession as they pace behind this wagon with the still dying man in it. So it says, if you could pace behind the wagon we flung him in and watch the white eyes writhing in his face. And writhing kind of is that awful wriggling kind of thing that worms do. Eyes shouldn't do that. It's all very unnatural. And this idea that he's been possessed by something, he's been taken over by something so hellish and awful that even his face is like a devil's, which is sick of sin. So, he looks like his face has just been kind of hung on him. His face is kind of no longer part of him. And this simile is kind of taking it beyond this diabolical. Diabolical means kind of connected with devils. Okay, this beyond this diabolical imagery, that his face looks so bad that it's like a devil is tired of all the wrongdoing and all the sin. It's just hanging there. So it's that awful. Again, we get the sibilance in the devil's sick of sin, kind of giving that sort of diabolical hissing noise, giving that kind of, I suppose, this building bitterness that Owen's speaker feels about what's happening to people. So you can almost spit those lines out. And then again, we get this kind of conditional, this repetition of if, reminding us that we are fortunate enough not to have experienced this, but we are hearing from someone who has. So, if you could walk, if you could hear. So we've got this huge appeal to the senses here. If you could hear at every jolt, at every kind of, time that wagon bangs into something or goes over a stone, the blood come gargling. So the onomatopoeia of gargling to really kind of evoke again that kind of idea of, you can hear it from the froth corrupted lungs. So froth being foaminess, corruption in that sense being kind of when something acidic has eaten in. So, this poor man, every time the wagon goes over something, is coughing up more bubbly blood because he's choking and drowning. And this whole image of seen as cancer, now this idea of cancer being something that is going to kind of take over and grow and ultimately kind of be a destructive force. Bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. So if you have cud, cud is the kind of stuff that the cows chewing. Okay, chewing the cud is something cows do. And it's that process where they kind of digest a bit of grass and then they bring it back up again and have another chew of it and then send it back down again. And it's the way that they break down grass. But here, that idea of him kind of coughing up this stuff, so a natural image has been distorted there. And this time the cud is kind of this froth that he's bringing up. And it's evoking the idea of sores on innocent tongues. And again, it's kind of reminding us of the soldier's youth. This is a group of men who really were very, very young. So, if you could have seen this, if you could have heard this, if you could have had this experience, if you could have realized what this was doing to the innocent, then, my friend, so we're addressing both the reader and those who are being jingoistic. Okay, jingoism was that tendency to kind of go, come on, brave boys, come and fight for your country. Oh, real men do this. That kind of really propaganda-based, publicity-based kind of advertising and campaigns to get people to sign up by selling this idea of, it being all wonderful to go out and fight and how you were going to be a hero. So it's both addressing you as the reader and addressing those who are guilty of that jingoism. to say, if you'd have seen all of this, if you'd have watched it, if you'd have experienced this, you would not tell, you wouldn't say with such great enthusiasm. Okay, so zest is enthusiasm. To children, ardent, if you are ardent, you are all fired up for something. You know, you're talking to children. These are not men. You know, if you'd have seen this, you wouldn't be lying to these children to send them off to war, because these children want desperate glory. They want to prove themselves. They want to do something, and they are falling for the old lie. And lie is capitalized there to make it that proper noun, this massive kind of important falsehood, this important kind of deceit that all of these people have fallen for, old as time, because, you know, Horatian poetry is a classical poetry. That Dulce et decorum est pro patria more, it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. So really, by the end, we've got this kind of slogan spat back at the reader to say, look, you wouldn't have lied to these children by telling them this if you'd have seen this. So the juxtaposition of the reality and the kind of jingoism, the publicity, the propaganda is really kind of left there as an accusation by the speaker to the wider world. And I hope that helps you make sense of the poem. I hope it's useful. Good luck with working with it.